Welcome back to another edition of the podcast, and today is our Game Week 32 National League preview and predictions. Of course, the podcast is proudly sponsored by Cards Accepted. If you use the link in the description, you'll get 50% off your card machine, no contracts or monthly fees. So, of course, it's another podcast. It's another podcast without my usual co-host. Tonight I am joined again by Rob Worall, of course, from NL Full Time. Of course, making it and kind of becoming more and more of a familiar face on the podcast now. Last week we had Sam Collier on. Of course, we recorded our podcast on Sunday. And now again, you're back on.
I know. It might be a familiar face. It'll never be as fresh as yours. All you do, Luke, is you just make me look that much older, mate.
Yeah, to be fair, because of the way, because I'm quite long, not in a good way this in either. I'm quite young looking for my age as well. So I think anyone who comes on the podcast, it always looks like there's a massive age gap. Even like when Sam comes on, he's only probably about 2 years older than me. But no, so of course tonight, a little bit to discuss. Of course, Tuesday night's fixtures, will be diving into those games, and then of course giving our predictions for Game Week 32 as well. Some quite interesting games to actually preview this week. A lot of the big teams for me, the sides who are doing well in the league at the moment, I think there could be a few potential bananas. It's gone out of my head. Yeah, banana skin, yeah. That, of course, could happen this Saturday. Please remember to like and subscribe, everyone. Also, let us know your thoughts on any latest topics in the National League. And also, if you do want to become a channel member, it is just £2.99 a month. You'll get early access to content on this channel, interviews, and you will also be able to use custom emojis in the live chat if you're into that for your club as well. Rob's probably there a bit like thinking, I'm not too fussed about the custom emojis.
No, although I do pay. I've got to be honest, listeners. Viewers. Sorry, I did subscribe a few months back as well. So paying Luke a bit of pocket money every week.
Yeah, of course, helping me out as well by coming on tonight as well. But no, I think starting things off with Tuesday's action, then I think the first game that we can, of course, discuss, Dagenham versus Woking. Of course, the game finished 2-1 to Dagenham. Concerning times for Dagenham, of course. Ex-Dagenham player, actually scored twice for Woking. It's concerning times for Dagenham, but what a big win for Woking that is.
It is significant as well because Woking leapfrogged Dagenham with that win, and after a long unbeaten run under Ardley, obviously it came to an end, didn't it? At York City, no shame in that result, but they bounced back, and that's what it had been hammering on about from probably 10 minutes after the full-time whistle at York until that game kicked off. It's all about how you respond now and how you bounce back. Dagenham took the lead. Josh Reese on the score sheet again. What a dependable player he is for them, and they're going to need more goals from him, particularly, because other people have gone the other way, haven't they? And for Marias to come back and score twice against the side that he's played for on two different occasions now would have been a sickener really for Dagenham and for Lewis Young, and slightly worrying times. I'm not going to predict doom for Dagenham. All I'm going to say is this: if you're looking for a mid-table team that might just drop and find themselves embroiled in that relegation dogfight, then I think they are the ones that are giving off those vibes right now.
Just feel like they could potentially, slip through that net, particularly when you see a lot of the sides towards the bottom swiftly improving as well. We've seen Files pick up quite a big result against Halifax. Braintree as well, their recent form, and even your Workings and your older shots who are on quite decent form at the moment. Does feel like Dagenham are getting sucked into it at the moment. And it's quite concerning for them, particularly because they've appointed Lewis Young as the permanent manager for this season now. And he hasn't really had the best of starts either. After they've already sacked a manager, I think in hindsight now, do you think you look at Dagenham and think, was sacking Ben Strevens really the right thing to do? For me personally, at the time, it wasn't, and I think most people agreed with me on that.
Yeah, I said at the time it wasn't. I've got a lot of time for Ben. Not just a nice bloke, because football and success in life isn't always about nice guys, is it? But he is a nice guy, and I don't think that they'd have been in any trouble whatsoever had he stayed there at the helm. So they may regret that decision. They may come to regret that decision. Of course, from a Lewis Young point of view, he needs a little bit longer. He wants to tweak it his way, but he's having to do so, without extra funds, and having lost Elliot Justin, who's been a key part of the Dagenham and Redbridge playing squad for a long time, having lost Junior Marias, who's come back and haunted them. Looking at the table now, they are 4 places above the relegation zone, but just 5 points, and they have played 30 games, so Fylde and Wealdstone, the 2 sides with the best chance of getting out of the bottom 4, I beg your pardon, have got a game in hand. That would put them potentially 2 and 4 points behind Dagenham. So long way to go as well. 16 games left for Dagenham, perhaps 17 for those others. We can't get too microscopic about the table at the moment. It's, someone's going to drop into that 4 that's not there. And of course, if you are Fylde, Wealdstone, maybe even Boston, you still got to keep believing that you're going to get out of it. Yeah,
they certainly are. And, it's a difficult time for Dagenham. 5 points currently above the drop zone. And, we have seen a lot of sides slip through the net before when you least expect it throughout the season. They look like they're fine, going to finish mid-table. And even, I think for Dagenham, finishing mid-table is quite a disappointing position. I think the fan base is quite ambitious overall. I get that opinion. Well, I get that kind of idea. You look at like Yeovil, for example, a couple of years ago when they went down for the majority of the season, they were probably in Dagenham's position now. And I think we were all saying on a different podcast that they're drawing too many games and you need to start turning those draws into wins. Instead, they went down the other route of turning those draws into defeats towards the end of the season. And of course, they went down, probably not being one of the worst teams in the league on paper, but of course slipped through the net. Boreham Wood of last season, they were another side for me. I think they're just about slipped through the net. You didn't really expect them to go down. I don't think throughout the season, I think everyone thought they would be fine. And, they ended up dropping into the bottom 4. I know a long time ago now, but Halifax were another side. When they actually got relegated from the National League, they looked comfortable, and then the final 10 games or so they went on a very bad run of form and ended up slipping through the net as well. So I think it is quite concerning times for Dagenham. We spoke a couple of weeks about them looking over the shoulder. Will their fans be looking over the shoulder? I think almost every Dagenham fan at the moment will be. As for Woking, another big victory for Woking. They needed to bounce back after that York defeat, and they certainly have, and they're looking like they're kind of progressing towards safety now.
Yes, certainly. One of the things Neil Ardley will be looking to do between now and the end of the season is just gradually turn around that goal difference, which it's not great. It's -12. It's not as bad as obviously the sides that are in the bottom 5 at the moment. But talking of goal difference, the final point on Dagenham and Redbridge, their goal difference is 0, and that's quite telling because I think you can track their decline down from pretty much FA Cup run aside, from the minute they stuck 7 past Gateshead earlier on in the season, to have scored 7 in one game and overall still be on a 0 goal difference. Probably tells a little bit of the story, doesn't it? But Woking above them now and probably only heading in one direction. Dagenham really finding themselves, 8th from bottom, but the top, if you like, of the little league of the bottom 8 at the moment. We can't completely dismiss Woking from the possible relegation picture at the moment, but I would say another 1 or 2 wins in the next couple of weeks, and they'll be clinging on to the likes of Tamworth and Eastleigh, and they'll be gone out of that fight, and it could be 8 teams battling to stay up.
Yeah, it certainly could. Another game, of course, that happened in midweek. You mentioned Tamworth there. They picked up a strong point away at Hartlepool, Of course, I believe they're actually winning for that game, and Hartlepool came from behind to get a point against Tamworth. Who would you say the better point is for that game? Do you think it's a better point for Tamworth or a better point for Hartlepool, depending on with Tamworth going 2-1 up?
I think every point that Tamworth get is decent. Home or away, they just consistently keep adding to their tally. They were. I mean, you to give the answer to that, you've got to have kind of been at the game and seen the ebbs and flows of it. Obviously, Hartlepool did take the lead, but then Tamworth turned it around by half-time, 2 goals in 2 minutes or so, I think it was. But Manny Di Sarue, on the hour mark, he made sure that Hartlepool got a point. It will be disappointing. Hartlepool will have, they're teetering around just outside those playoffs, and they will have marked down one at home to Tamworth. It's a game they got to win. But I saw Tamworth just a couple of weeks before come in and be really dogged and get themselves a well-earned point at Aldershot. So nobody's going to find them easy passage this season, Tamworth. And so they sit 15th. They're on 38 points now for the season. Had they held on to that lead, it would have been 40, with still a third of the season to go. Terrific overachievement. They're not quite there, but they probably, in this season in particular, they probably only need another 10 points from their final 16 games to be sure of staying up.
I think Tamworth are setting a bit of a blueprint on this division overall. For me personally, if you actually look at the style of play that they play, it's a very unique style. I think not unique style, it's a style that is very hard to play against. It's a very traditional style and industrial style. And there's always this question, isn't there, about sides and being able to find sides out. I don't think that's the case with a side like Tamworth. I think it's something that sides can't really prepare for. I think it doesn't really matter how good you are. You're always going to have a really tough game against Tamworth. We saw Tottenham Hotspur have a good game against Tamworth. So, you're not going to get much better opposition than that. So for me personally, I think away from home, it's always a good point to go to Tamworth. But I think when you're the home side against them, in Hartlepool's position, especially, when they had that momentum from actually getting back on level terms, I think you would have expected them to go on to win that game. But no, strong point for Tamworth. Hartlepool, I wouldn't say it's the worst point in the world, but of course that means that they remain unbeaten under Lenny Lawrence at home this season. So for me, I think it's a strong point. I think Hartlepool will just be looking to bounce back now and be able to get a victory. Next game then, of course, Oldham versus Altrincham, a Greater Manchester derby, you may say. Of course, Altrincham actually went 2-0 up against Oldham, which is very impressive for them. Oldham, I think before the game, would they have taken a point? No. After being 2-0 down, perhaps yes, they would have done. And I think for me, I think for Altrincham, it's a case of them as well. I think they would have took a point before the game, but to obviously drop 2 points, I think it's a little disappointing from their perspective to not really be able to solidify a place inside that playoffs comfortably.
Yeah, and a couple of points of note from this one for me. Newby and Linney, both of them in fine form at the same time, and Altrincham, they're getting amongst the goals nearly every week now. But for Oldham, we probably would say that Oldham of a year ago, if they were 2-0 down at home, they probably would have lost, so they found a way to get back in that game. And the other encouraging sign for them is James Norwood coming off the bench and scoring. And that's only going to help them take a little bit of the load at times off of Fondop, who's having the best season he's ever had. I think he's the third top scorer in the National League now, Mike Fondop. And Josh Lundstrom starting to play regularly and appear on the score sheet. And there's another bit of irony there, isn't there? Because he scored there, the key goal, if you like, the one that got Oldham a point, and that was against his old side, Altrincham.
Yeah, it certainly was. And I think for Oldham, of course, they've got Sutton at home now. Like I said before the game, I think they were probably looking at that as an opportunity to be able to get all 3 points. For me, we spoke about it quite in a lot of detail about Oldham on Sunday, and I do think it's results like this for me why I don't think that they're involved in this title race. I don't want to go into too much detail because obviously we spoke about it in quite a lot on Sunday. But a game at home to Altrincham after you've just got a bit of momentum back at Boundary Park, for me it's a little bit disappointing that they didn't get all 3 points, but I suppose it just showed character to come from behind them and be able to get a point against them because, Altrincham themselves are on very strong form at the moment. Certainly an underdog inside those playoff spots. I think, including myself, we all felt that this season, after the previous year, they wouldn't be able to live up to the expectations. I actually think they're a stronger side this season than what they were last season. I don't know if you agree with that or not as a team.
They were I think they're similar. Obviously, last year, when you look at the makeup of their end result, it was probably slightly inflated by one player in Chris Clark. But they knew this year they had to find more people to score goals throughout the team. A similar challenge, really, that my own team, Aldershot, have faced this year. You've lost the goals of Tollage and Stokes, and you've got to replace them. And Altrincham lost his goals, and him as a person, he was very creative as well, wasn't he? I was just going to mention one other thing about Altrincham, and that was sad news. Really nice guy. Ethan Ross, I think it's been confirmed that he's got an ACL injury, so that'll be the end of his season. And Caleb Anson played in goal for them at Boundary Park. Obviously couldn't keep a clean sheet on his debut, but just 19 years old. And it'll be, how he does, how he settles in, if he's going to be the long-term answer for the rest of the season for Phil Parkinson, could be key in whether Altrincham can maintain their recent form and get themselves a place in those playoffs. They've got quite a difficult run of fixtures at the minute. They've just literally played at Boundary Park, haven't they? And then this Saturday, they I can't quite get. I haven't got the fixtures in front of me at the moment, but from what I remember, they've got another tough game this weekend. Yeah, they have away to Gateshead. We'll come on to those predictions, of course, in due course.
Yeah, that's just one defeat now for Altrincham in 15 games for them in all competitions, I should say. Of course, on the topic of players gaining serious injuries and being out for the season, Joe Cummins, it's been announced now, of course, for Halifax Town. He will be out for the season as well, which is a big loss for Halifax, the centre half. I'm not too concerned about someone not being able to come in and fill that role. But of course, I wish him all the best for the rest of the season. He's a great player, and it's such a shame for him. I think it happened to him over a season ago now, where he was out for the season, and for him to come back, get back in form, and then to get an injury like that, it's just so disappointing, and it feels so unfair for him overall. And coming on to Halifax as well, of course, a 3-1 defeat for them against Southend during midweek. Just from your perspective, you're looking in on this game. Big win for Southend, wasn't it?
It's massive for Southend. Sometimes when a team, a club, a manager really, really needs a win, it was this one. They bowed out timidly, really, hadn't they, in the FA Trophy, Southend against Sittingbourne. And they were desperate to bounce back in the league the following game, and they didn't. They lost that as well. I, from the outside looking in, I was quite surprised by this. But despite all the kudos and the credit that Kev Mayer had built up during his time through the difficult period at Southend, which fans will tell you has been going on for about 10 years, a lot of the fan base want him out now. They think the way the team plays, passing the ball sideways, isn't penetrative enough. And I guess he and the team responded pretty well, didn't they, on Tuesday night? I've got to go there next Tuesday, actually, Luke, with the shots. So, I'm keeping a keen eye on Southend at the minute. Gus Scott Morris, he's into double figures now for the season, isn't he? Hopper and Charlie Kendall with the goals. I think Halifax's goal was a late, it got them 2-1, didn't it? With 7 minutes to go, and then Kendall scored a third. I don't know what reports you kind of got back. I know it was a difficult one. You couldn't make it, could you, midweek? But for Halifax now, the last 4 games, forget these low-scoring draws. They've gone win, defeat, haven't they? And just as you felt they were really flying with the 2 wins out of 3. They go and come on unstuck again. But, Southend on their day, we know are a decent side.
I think it just shows how quickly it can just change in football. I think a couple of weeks ago, I should say, after that Ebbsfleet win, we had Oliver Borby on the bench, and he was a key player. He's someone who I think we missed on Tuesday night and against Fylde as well. He's a game changer in certain games. He's not particularly a player that I think is needed for every game, but in certain games, you need him to carry the ball forward, and I think Tuesday night was a prime example of that. Of course, losing a centre half as well. It's always difficult when that partnership changes and is dismantled, and someone else comes into that position when 2 centre halves have been consistently playing together. So I don't think that helps either. I think Southend are beginning to just get their annual 3 points against us at Roots Hall now. I find it a really difficult place to go. It's one of the places for me where, we've got Southend away. Oh, God, I'd take a point there. Whereas, you look overall and you look at the form at home, it's not that impressive. But I always just have this impression when we go there that it's like one of the hardest places to go in the league. And, we always do seem to struggle, not just away, but at home as well against Southend. We've only had one win, I should say, against Southend since they've actually dropped back into the National League. And the reason I put this down to is I think both sides play a very similar style of football. And when 2 sides do that, it's always going to be a really difficult game, particularly, I think, for us. They do play exactly how we play, defensively really strong, press from the front as well. So, it's really hard to break that press. So once you've broken the press, it's then very hard to break them down as well. So defensively, they're really set for me, Southend. And I think it's about probably catching, being able to get a goal. If you can get a goal against them and then catch them out, that's when maybe Southend become a little bit more vulnerable, is when you can score that first goal. But if you go 1-0 down to Southend, I think most sides are going to struggle. I think it's only been twice this season where Southend have actually lost from winning positions. Really difficult side to play against for me personally. And of course, they've done the double overs now. The first side, I think, to do the double overs this season so far now. And it's a great win for Southend. I think whenever I see them play, my dad, when he watched the stream, pointed it out perfectly. He basically stated that I don't understand why Southend are in the position that they are in. And I think for me, the reason I think it is because of the way they play. They're a bit like Halifax. They've got plan A. They haven't got a plan B. They're very defensively strong. They've got a game plan. But whenever they have serious injuries to players, or they're coming up against a side that doesn't suit the way that they play against them, that's when they seem to struggle. And that's why I believe Southend are probably in the position that they are in at the moment. I don't know what your take is on that.
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I expected a 0-0 possibly here. Mm-hmm. And was it a 0-0 when it was at the Shea against
2-0 Southend?
Well, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This one was 0-0 for quite a while. But one thing I noticed is that when they did get the opening goal, Gus Scott Morris, the atmosphere in that ground can really, really change, and it can get really quite vibrant, for Southend. And, while they'd just gone ahead, they scored again. And I remember them doing something similar against Aldershot last year. Very, very tight first half, where I thought Aldershot were the better team. And then the game sort of turned on a sending off of Roland Meniace, and they scored. And they scored again twice more really, really quickly, and went on to win comfortably that day, 4-1. But I think the previous 2 seasons, Aldershot had won there. So it'll be an interesting battle next week. But as for this one, really disappointing for Halifax. They'll have been looking to come back with at least a point from that game. But looking at the league table, Luke, you've played a few extra games, particularly over Rochdale, who really can rein you in, can't they, once they get back on that pitch and get playing. But you do have a little bit of a cushion. You're in 6th place, and there's 4 or 5 points there. So it's not all done. You just... as everybody says in this league, you dust yourself down, and if you can go back and stick 3 points on the board again on Saturday, you're right back in pole position.
Yeah, we certainly have. The one positive from that game, it was a very good goal from Luca Thomas. Not the actual shot itself, but he got in. He was in a tight space. He took on about 3 players, beat them all, and then had a shot on goal. And fortunately, it did go in for us. And on another day, to be fair, I say Southend, it's very hard to get back into the game when they take the lead. But Jamie Cook did have an opportunity, a half volley, and it only slightly went wide. And that could have easily on another day have gone in. But I can't say that Halifax deserved anything from that game. I think Southend were the better team. And I think for me overall, they'll certainly be looking to hunt down a playoff spot. I just feel it's still a big ask for me. I think consistency is an issue with them. Like I said, I think they've only got one game plan. And when they have injuries to players, it seems to really have an effect on them. And losing to the likes of Maidenhead for me proves to me why I just don't think this will be their year to get inside those playoffs. But a very good win for them. And I think Southend fans, if I was a Southend fan at the moment, I'd be looking up rather than looking downwards at the moment, certainly. But no, that kind of wraps up the actual games itself. We'll come quickly to the live chat and then get on with the predictions. Remember to get your comments in, guys. Of course, we've got Lee Davis, who's with us tonight. Welcome to the stream, Lee. And then Lee's also put, better get used to it, Luke. Wealdstone are going, Luke. Yeah, that certainly is a question. Wealdstone potentially dropping back down into the National League South. Paul is really concerned about that at the moment, I have to say. He was quite optimistic during Alex Reid's first spell. But in recent weeks, he's very, very concerned about Wealdstone and their current position. And I think anyone would be. They're a side that are on bad form at the moment, slipped into the relegation zone. It's actually not in their hands anymore either. And it does feel like at the moment, if there's going to be another team that's going to kind of join Ebbsfleet and Boston in that gap between those other sides, it does feel like Wealdstone are going to be the next one, doesn't it, Rob?
I mean, I'd certainly give Fartham Maidenhead a better chance of finishing out of the bottom 4 than I would Wealdstone. I think perhaps most likely to be in the bottom 3. One of the things that struck me, and I'm not casting judgment on any of them, but it's their 3rd consecutive manager not proven at this level or above now, isn't it? And that is difficult to do. Of course, it's difficult also for them to attract highly experienced managers, that have managed full-time clubs because they are a part-time club. So I totally understand that as well. But what doesn't help Wealdstone is that the majority of comparisons they'd get given are with Tamworth as the other part-time club in the division. And Tamworth really are making a much better fist of it this season, aren't they? Yes, they had a particular playing style and an identity, and Wealdstone certainly had that under Maynard, but do they still have it now, 3 managers later? I don't know, to be honest with you. It's going to be a long, hard end of the season for Wealdstone. They'll make a fist of it, I'm sure. But if you were Paul right now, then you'd probably be ducking this podcast. Oh, he has done. No, I'm only joking. Only joking. We're going to try and rescue your prediction scores tonight. So
yeah, we certainly are as well. Of course, coming on to that shortly. Just for me, finally on Wealdstone, I just genuinely don't think they've been the same team since Stuart Maynard left. I think they kind of stumbled over the line last season. I think he'd done all the good work during that first half of the season, and I think they kind of stumbled over that line in the end. And then this year started horrendously for them. It looked like they were going to go down quite early on, and there were going to be a bit of a gap. And then Alex Reid, of course, came in. They got a few players back from injury, including, of course, Sam Ashford. And then, of course, losing your manager as well. Everyone's got their own opinions about him. I don't particularly rate him. But to be fair, it does seem to have had a slight effect on Wealdstone. I say a slight effect, quite a drastic effect on them in terms of the actual results that they've been getting recently. They've struggled against sides around them as well. It's going to be a big couple of weeks for Wealdstone. And of course, we did our predictions on Sunday night for our 4 to go down. Someone's actually asked us here. I will come back to those people who put comments above. But he's actually put, who are your 4 to go down? I actually said Ebbsfleet, Boston. Used to current bottom 4, didn't you, Rob, to go down? And I said Ebbsfleet, Boston, Wealdstone, and then I think I had Maidenhead to go down. Now, if you want us to kind of analyse that, then please, after this podcast, go and check our podcast that we did on Sunday evening. There's chapters for that. You don't have to watch the full 2 hours or so if you don't want to. Of course, if you do, then you can certainly do that. But these chapters for that, where you can skip to certain areas that I have implemented in as well. We've also had Scott, who's come and said, "Hiya, fellas, welcome to the stream, Scott." And then we've also had TJ121234 said, "The standard of refs in the league is really low, getting slightly tiring. Feels it leans towards teams that lean into the dark arts." For me personally, I think there's an issue with officiating across the board, across all the divisions. You actually look at every single division. There's always fans complaining about the officials. I just think it's something that's part of the game. There's certain rules that frustrate me, and I think it's across the board, such as goal. I don't blame the goalkeepers, I don't blame the team, but the amount of time wasting that's allowed. For example, Fylde came to the Shea a couple of weeks ago. Their goalkeeper went down injured. I say injured. Went down injured. Of course, he can't go off the pitch, which means the game gets stopped. Of course, Fylde were winning at the time. The ref has to come over, was actually about to book him, and then he went down to pretend he was injured, and that's why he couldn't take the kick. He had to then get the physio on. They then played for another 5 or 10 minutes or so. He then suddenly went down injured once again, which just stopped the game. And that's something that's frustrating, because I think the referee actually knows that he's kind of cheating there. But, if someone goes down injured, you can't assume that they're faking it, can you?
No, it's frustration. Excuse me, it's frustrating, but it's part of football, and I think you just have to hope that you don't get too much of it. Really, it's what they call the dark arts, isn't it? And some sides have been very, very good and very adept at doing this for a long time in this league. I don't think you're not gonna kick it out. You hope that referees will, use their noddle, use a bit of common sense. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. As for the overall standard of officiating, I think it's a concern, and unfortunately, the number of referees coming into the game is a concern, and part of that, it's like a vicious circle, isn't it? Really, because part of that is the level of abuse that they get, and the level of dissent. So, funnily enough, as a player, I always used to have a little bit of empathy for the referee, and that's just purely because I'm one of two brothers, and my elder brother, instead of playing, refereed from when he was 17, and he still referees now at the age of 60. So it's always given me that little tiny bit more respect for referees. But I do feel for managers and players in the modern game. It's almost like you can't even appeal against anything anymore, can you? If you do it too vociferously, then they just start waving cards everywhere. What
position did you play, Bob? Just out of curiosity.
I was an ungainly centre forward. I couldn't play anywhere else. I was just a target man, kind of a forward, and I was very lucky that in my latter years, I played till I was 43. And in my latter years, I was lucky. There was lots of speedy young, wingers and forwards all around me. So I knew what my job was: stand up there and hold it up or flick it on, and try and shim one in now and again. And I had a good goal scoring record, but to be fair, the highest I played was UCL, and so we're nowhere near the level that we talk about.
I wonder if you had empathy for the referee when you went down for a penalty and the referee didn't actually give it.
Truthfully, this is no word of a lie. I played 25 years and I got 2 yellow cards. That's it. One of those was mistaken identity, and the other one, I did get fouled in the box. But in the moment, I thought to myself, I can still get the ball and get it and still get an effort on goal. And then I realised it was running out of play, and I went down a little bit late, and that's why I got the yellow card.
Oh, okay then. And then TJ1234 has also come and said both teams to Oldham and Altrincham were missing their first choice keepers, and 2 young keepers came on loan, stepping fairly last minute. Also, Tom Pett didn't start, and he's the reason for the comeback. Yeah, he's certainly improved that midfield for Oldham since he's come in. I know he's had his injury issues in the past. I think Sam Clucas was always going to be a significant loss, wasn't he? You've got player there that's probably capable of playing at the Championship still. So when you lose a player like that, it's always going to take its toll, and it's going to be hard to adjust. But I just feel like Oldham certainly have now. And then the Blue News podcast, who's a Southend United supporter, said, "Hi guys, how are you both? We are both good, thank you. It's good to see you here." Scott Flynn, as well as Southend fan, has come in and used the shrimp as emoji. He's also said, "Do you think my team York are going to win the league?" I said yes. Rob actually said no. Did you say? I think you had someone else, didn't you? Or did you have York to win the league?
No, I did go for York, but it's honestly it's crazy. You can't really call it. It can change by the week. I said realistically, Oldham were trying to make a fist of coming back into it, but I think it was less likely. And one of the reasons it's less likely with Oldham is just purely because not only have they got to do very well, but they've got to get past 3 other sides. And if you just look at the law of averages, at least 1, if not 2, of those 3 top sides are going to have strong ends to the season. It might be more realistic, but still challenging for Oldham to get past one of them and get into the top 3 and get themselves a home semi-final in the playoffs. But no, I did pushed on it, really pushed. I don't want to give a team right now, but I pushed. I gave York, and then I had sort of Forest Green and Barnet coming very, very close. I thought maybe 2 or 3 points between all 3 of them. And I also said I don't see any one team or 2 teams breaking away. I think it'll be competitive right to the end.
Yeah, certainly will be. And then we've also had Rob, who's come, not Rob, Jake, who's coming to actually ask you a question, Rob. And we can touch on this. Rob, question off topic. What do you think of the title race in the National League South? With it being so tight, Dorking looked nowhere near a few weeks ago, but recent form gives them a chance.
Yeah, really, really brilliant title race in the National League South. You've got 6 of the current top 7 are full-time teams. And then you've got Truro and Western-super-Mare that are massively overachieving. I think realistically, the other 6 are in the title race. I think the favourites will, or rather, I'd narrow that 6 down to 3 that I believe genuinely can win it. And that is Dorking, Boreham Wood and Worthing. Now, Worthing are actually, I looked tonight, they're actually the bookies' favourites. And I think that's largely based on their kind of points per game. They've got a few games in hand. They're in second place and they would appear to be in the best position right now. But let's remember that Worthing are part-time. This is a long season. They've got 4 or 5 really, really good individual players that will certainly hold their own in the league above. But for that reason, and I would love it, by the way, I'd love to see whether it's via the winning the title or the playoffs. I'd love to see Worthing get a crack at the National League, and they probably would go full-time as well if they did. Certainly Agata, the manager's calling for that. Right now, of the other 2, of course, you'd favour Dorking. They had that wretched start to the season, as Mark White says, quote, "We gave the others a hell of a head start." And they've caught them up now. Yes, they played 1 or 2 games more. But Boreham Wood, for some reason, it's just not happening for them in the last few weeks, is it? They've fallen away. They've had 2 or 3 defeats in the last 4. And Dorking are just starting to just click through the gears. I think if Dorking can pick up 2 points a game between now and the end of the season, it'll be enough to win that title. And I tell you what, I'd love to see Dorking and Mark White back in the National League next season.
Yeah, they had something a little bit different to the division. I think for me, when I look in that National League South, I can't comment on who I think is going to win the title because I don't think I have the knowledge on it to really give a prediction. But I'd love to see Dorking back. And I think I'd like to see Torquay back as well. I know they win the title race, but I think they may have slipped away a little bit after a few recent performances. Of course, we've also had Scott Flynn who's come in and said if Southend had a striker, if Southend strikers can keep producing, big if, lol, we are a big threat until the end of the season. Yeah, a side like that is always a threat because, you know, you look at them, there's not particularly, I think, too much pressure on them now. Not a lot of people will be writing them off, not really taking any notice of Southend. Yet, if they can build a bit of momentum and go on a good run of form, they aren't that far off the playoffs. For me personally, I just don't actually think they're good enough or consistent enough, I should say, to finish inside the playoffs this season. I don't think it's a case of being able to make up those points. or having. I just think it's a case of consistency for me personally. And then we've also had. Good to see you too, mate. Spot on about Southend. If we score first, we win. If we don't, we either lose or draw. That's been the story most of the season for us, really. And then Josh has come and said, thoughts on York taking 800 plus to Barnet on Tuesday night. That is certainly good away support. I think we can both agree with that. On a Tuesday night as well. For a Saturday, I think that'd be pretty good. But for a Tuesday, Barnet away to take 800 is pretty impressive, isn't it, Rob?
Yeah, that's fantastic. It is absolutely fantastic. It's not the easiest to get to by train. Yeah, you can get pretty close to Barnet coming down that northern line, but you've still got transport to get there to the Hive. To I'm trying to think where it is now. It's not in Barnet, is it? It's escaping me at the moment. But the name of the
Wealdstone, isn't it? It's like Harrow. No, I don't think it is.
I should know, and I do know, but I just can't think right now of the name of it. But I also wanted to pick up on York's home crowds as well. I mean, just unbelievable. They solidly were getting, weren't they, 2.5 for quite a while, but literally the belief in that club now. Obviously, you know, they're well backed, and they've got a good young manager here who's doing stuff. They've got exciting players. They've got an exciting way of playing. I've yet to go there this season. I think it's coming up in the next couple of months towards the end of the season. But I'm looking forward to it because it's a good atmosphere there. It's a good stadium when it's packed. And I expect around the time that I go, York will be hopefully from their point of view within touching distance of that title, provided they keep up the momentum they've got at the moment.
Becky's come in and said York have the best fans in the league. And then we've also had Killer Scratchers come back and actually said Oldham instead. And Jake's actually said Ebbsfleet 1-0 York. You heard it here first. Big shock incoming this weekend. To be fair, I wouldn't write that off because Ebbsfleet have certainly been more competitive in recent weeks. Of course, picking a point up against Rochdale themselves. Of course, getting that second win, it'd be interesting to see who could come against. And they'll certainly be quite confident, I think, at the moment. More confident than what they've been for the majority of the season. So we've come to a point now where we will get on with the predictions. I haven't been able to update the predictions league. We didn't actually, we forgot to write down the predictions of Sam's. I think he did beat me just. But I need to rewatch that video because he didn't send me it before. His predictions. So I need to rewatch that video to actually get his predictions and I'll add it to the tally. This was it before Sam came on. It was 112 points to 104. But I think that's a little bit closer now because Sam did better the other week. Yes, I think it'll be about 4 or 5 points you off now, Rob. Do you think you can make it up this game week and help Paul out?
Well, I hope so. I'm just a bit gutted looking at those scores. I know you say you got to update them, but the last time I come on, I had a good week, didn't I? And we got level with you. Absolutely bang level. Yeah, Paul, what's going on? I think I did hear, I've watched a couple of them, haven't they? And Paul's been getting his daughter involved, hasn't he, with the predictions?
She did better than him. I'm not even joking when I say that. She actually did. Yeah, she actually did a better job than him. I think she actually beat me one week. So, yeah, that to be fair, says a lot about both of us, I should say overall. But no, like I said, I think you came on, got it back level, and then I just took the lead again, to be honest. So, yeah, I think Paul needs to get his act together and needs to stop getting other people to help him out, to be honest.
I guess that can be your excuse if you don't win it at the end of the season, that you had all these other people helping him and you've only ever done your own, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like last week he had Sam Colley, who's a National League analyst. Now he's got you on who managed to get you back in the game, get him back in the game early on in the season. So for me, he's just making too many excuses now. And in the process of that, of getting back on level, he's off gallivanting on holiday. He's on a ski trip now, apparently. So yeah, that says everything. But no, we are at a point now where we'll come on to the predictions. We'll have a quick glance. You can have a quick glance at the table, I should say, as we go down to the predictions. Of course, Barnet still lead the way, still on form at the moment. Haven't actually conceded for 540 minutes of football. And of course, we will get on to game week 32 and starting things off with, would you say, a relegation clash clash between AFC Fylde and Dagenham?
Well, yeah, we've kind of said that Dagenham are now 8th bottom, and they're certainly, they're nowhere near done, are they? They've got points to get. So yeah, I think it will be a really tough and close affair. If you want me to come straight out with it, I will. I'm going to go for Fylde 2, Dagenham 1 on this one. Long, difficult journey for Dagenham right now. I wouldn't say that Fylde are in magnificent form, but they've had quite a fair bit of time to get used to the predicament that they are in, and they have been picking up the odd win, haven't they, of late? And they are the best placed of the teams in the bottom 4 to try and get out of it. They were out of it, but for Maidenhead leapfrogging them last week. I think this will be tight. I think Fylde are just a little bit more in the mode, in the gear that they need to be in right now than Dagenham, for whom it probably feels a little bit like quicksand at the moment. It is a massive opportunity for Dagenham to go and say, no, we're not going to be involved in this relegation battle. We're going to put this team to the sword, and the league table will look an awful lot healthier for them if they can. But I don't see it right now. I think neither side are in great form, but I think Fylde with home advantage, and the other big advantage that we talk about every time we mention the word Fylde, we mention the word and the name Horton. So one of the rare weeks in which he scored 0 points in the National Fantasy League that I take part in last week. But I'm sure it won't happen 2 games running, Luke.
Whenever I see Fylde play, I always feel that they're in a false position when Halifax come up against them, or actually when they play on the telly. I'm sure you'll have different sides as well. When you see them, they always seem to do well against Aldershot, or actually play well against Aldershot. But Fylde was certainly a side for me, and I look at them and I just think there's some talented individuals in that side. Of course, Horton kind of steals the headlines, or gains the headline, I should say, not steals it, because he certainly deserves that. But the likes of Massey, Tyler Roberts as well, a youngster. There's a lot of individuals in that side for me that have got a lot of quality, particularly going forward. Of course, on the defensive side, seems to be their downfall season on season. But I do think, coming up against a Dagenham side that'll be short of confidence at the moment. They've only had 1 win in 9. For me, I think Fylde will be able to get all 3 points here being at home, and I'm going to go for a 3-1 AFC Fylde win. We'll move on to the next game now. Of course, top of the league, Barnet up against the only side alongside Chesterfield to actually defeat Barnet at the Hive this season, which of course was in the playoffs last year, and that was of course Solihull Moors who did that. Solihull Moors obviously come into this on not the best of form, but you never know with these two sides what could happen. I'm expecting it to be quite a difficult game for Barnet. How do you see it going?
Well, they've just kept 6 consecutive clean sheets, and I'm backing them to collect another one, a 7th clean sheet. They're very good at home. They're literally going through the gears right now, Barnet, and it's a difficult time for Solihull Moors. Obviously, they've had the loss of Andy Wing. You've made your thoughts clear on the man that they've chosen to replace him. Jury's out for me. What I noticed about Solihull Moors when they were collecting points and in and around those playoff positions was that week in, week out, Jack Stevens and the other one, Connor Wilkinson, I want to say, were scoring goals regularly. Forgive me, Solihull Moors fans, I don't know what the situation is with Wilkinson, but he's not been in the squad in the last few games, and Jack Stevens' goals have dried up a little bit of late as well. I don't see this being the game where Solihull Moors suddenly turn things round. They were, of course, the team that went, let us not forget, to Barnet under Andy Wing in the playoffs last year and proper surprised them, didn't they? Beaten by 3 or 4 in the playoffs to knock Barnet out last season. But this is the best part of a year later under a different manager, and Barnet are a different beast this season. So 2-0 to me to Barnet.
I'll change my prediction because I went 2-0. I'll go 1-0 Barnet. I think this will be a slightly more tricky game than people think at the moment. Solihull Moors, there's still a lot of quality in that side for me overall. Of course, Matt Taylor, a manager for me that, of course, everyone knows my opinions on him. being appointed as the Solihull Moors manager. But I think for me, Barnet at the moment, like you've mentioned, on form, I expect them to keep a 6th consecutive clean sheet, and I think Barnet will win this 1-0. Moving on to the next game, informed Braintree up against Forest Green Rovers. I say informed Braintree, of course, they had that defeat to Altrincham, but overall, I'd still class them as a side that's in good form. But they're coming up against a Forest Green side that it doesn't feel like anything seems to faze them at the moment, does it?
No, I'm actually bored of my own voice saying week in, week out on our own podcast how Forest Green just find a way. Whether it's to get a point when they're losing or a win when they're drawing, they just keep doing it. And I can see it happening again this weekend. I've got huge respect for Braintree. They are really making a fist of surviving at this level this season, which given everything, given that they started the season, or they went into the bulk of the season with only 4 players left from their promotion last year. And they've now had a change of manager. They've had the budget kind of torn up and started again. And they have been doing quite well of late. And they've got a good way of playing under their new manager. And I see them probably scoring in this game. And again, without necessarily being particularly easy on the eye, I see Forest Green scoring a couple of goals in this one. It's a bizarre game because I watch a lot of games on NLTV and look at the highlights, and I genuinely feel, I swear that I'd already watched this game this season, Braintree at home to Forest Green, but it must have been the one at the new lawn. But again, without necessarily being that easy on the eye, I think Forest Green will scrape it by the odd goal. I'm going 2-1 Forest Green.
I've gone for 2-0 Forest Green Rovers. Yeah, for me personally, I've mentioned there about them nothing phasing them. You just seem to find a way to win against sides. Very, very consistent. For me, you look at their away form as well. It's actually stronger than their home form. Yet they've actually had they're actually unbeaten at home, which just says a lot, doesn't it? They're unbeaten at home, yet they've got a better away form than home form in terms of positions. So for me, overall, I think Forest Green Rovers will be able to get through this game. Braintree on form. I think that Altrincham game for me showed that perhaps that there's still a level between them and other sides. It doesn't matter if you're on form. If a side's better than you, a lot better than you, I should say, they're going to beat you. And I think Forest Green Rovers are far superior than Braintree at the moment, which they should be, to be fair. But I think they'll be able to win this game 2-0. Moving on to your side then, Eastleigh versus Aldershot Town. Of course, Aldershot on fairly decent form at the moment. In terms of their current position, I think Aldershot's fans will be looking over the shoulders, perhaps the more pessimistic fans, although they're on decent form. I think the frustrating thing is the fact that you've been struggling to play. Of course, being away from home at Eastleigh, a side that are very inconsistent themselves. This is a game for you where I think you'll be feeling like you can get something from it.
Yeah, I think every single week, I think watching on, and I think that Aldershot Town, as a team and as a management team, I think they believe that they can get something out of every game. They've been in nearly every game this year. Rochdale and Halifax have outplayed Aldershot at the EBB this season. Fylde massively outplayed them away. But other than that, Aldershot have been in every single game this season. Eastleigh are a difficult one to predict. I normally go with the narrative that it doesn't matter whether they're playing well or not. Paul McCallum can hit you and hurt you, but he's not been playing. I think he's out injured at the moment. That increases my optimism. But I always find it very, very hard predicting Aldershot scores. It's difficult when you're so kind of emotively involved in it. And I've got a head and heart thing going on here today. Heart says a 2-1 win for Aldershot, and the head says a draw. And I really don't want to predict a draw. But overwhelmingly, of course, the majority of Aldershot's recent league games have ended in draws. They've won 1 and drawn 4 of their last 5. And that's in and around 5 consecutive cup wins in 3 different cup competitions where they've got to the quarterfinals of 2 and the semi-finals of another. So there's a bit of belief there. There's definitely some togetherness. And I do feel that they're kind of due one that goes their way. They beat Eastleigh at the EBB this season. So it's an opportunity for the Shots to go on and do a double. I'm going to flip it back to you for a second, because I know it does make it more exciting when we go for two different predictions. I've got two scorelines in my head. One's a win for Aldershot, one's a draw. What are you going with, Luke?
I actually went for a draw for this game. I went for a 2-2 draw. Was that the same?
No, I was going for a 1-1 draw.
Yeah.
But you know what? Just for the hell of it, just to make things different and more exciting for the predictions, I'm going to go between the 50-50. I'll go for the win for the Shots 2-1. That's not, deluded. It's not arrogant. It's just somewhere between the head and the heart. And I think if they play like they've been playing, they can score a couple of goals and maybe keep a clean sheet or just concede one, then they'll be all right. I've been impressed, Luke, with the two young defenders we've got on loan. That's Will Armitage from Southampton and Luca Woodhouse from Wickham Wanderers in particular. They've been very, very good. And I think the form that Dewhurst's been in goal and Ollie Scott, a revelation at left centre-back, I think 1 or 2 clean sheets are not too far away for the Shots. But all that said, I'll go Eastleigh 1, Shots 2.
Yeah, I've gone for a 2-2 draw. I think if you look overall this season, both obviously concede a fair amount, like you mentioned there. Of course, I don't watch the Shots week in, week out, but like you mentioned there, you've mentioned they're a lot stronger defensively. Of course, Eastleigh have quite a strong firepower going forward, the likes of Shade and Paul McCallum as well as the standouts there for me. But I just feel it'll be a 2-2 draw. I think it's a bit of a derby, isn't it? Perhaps I think more for Eastleigh fans than Shot fans, but there will be a section of older Shot fans that have seen this as a bit of a derby. I think it'll be a tasty game, particularly if there's a neutral. I think it'd be a good game to go to. So for me, I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw for this game. Moving on to the next one then. Ebbsfleet versus York. A couple of weeks ago, I'd go for a comfortable York win. I'd probably have gone for a 3-4-0. Now I'm a little bit less sure, and it's more of a case because Ebbsfleet have seemed to become more competitive. York have kind of shown their vulnerabilities in aspects, perhaps losing to Boston. We mentioned earlier about teams not doing well against certain playing styles. I actually think Boston will be one of those sides for York, for me personally. I don't think it's a coincidence that Boston have done the double over York. I think there will be something in that in terms of the playing style that won't actually suit York, and Boston will know how to play against the Minster men. For me, for this one, I think it'll be a really, really awkward and difficult game for York. It's a type of game where I think it's a game where they go down there, get the 3 points and get the hell out of there. It doesn't really matter how they win. And I'm actually going to go for a 1-0 York win. I'd still expect them to have enough. They've got a lot of quality going forward and they should have enough. But Ebbsfleet, for me, I have to praise them. They're remaining competitive. They're still giving it their all, which is something a couple of weeks ago they haven't done. I don't know if you saw that team talk, Rob, that Ebbsfleet's manager did after the game, but it was very motivational. Yeah, it was very motivational, and it has given me a lot more positive things to say about Ebbsfleet than what I have for the majority of this season. What's your prediction and thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can see both actually. I can see Ebbsfleet. Listen, everybody's written them off from staying up. Nobody will give them a prayer against York, and in a way, it kind of takes it's literally a free hit for them, isn't it? And they are together. They're playing for Josh Wright. They're playing for contracts for next season. And I do see them holding out for quite a while, maybe even 60, 70 minutes. But I've just got this feeling that York will score. They'll get ahead. Ebbsfleet will chase the game and they'll concede once or twice more. So I'm going to go a little bit bolder with a scoreline. Probably not a reflection of the game, but more what will happen when York get ahead. And I'm going to go Ebbsfleet 0, York 3.
15 games Ebbsfleet have got to save their season. For me personally, I think it's unrealistic for them to stay up now. Of course, Ebbsfleet will try to remain optimistic. They need a goal still. But I think they need title form, to be honest, to stay up. And with one win all season, for me personally, it's really unrealistic for them to be able to survive from this position. I think it'd be one of the greatest escapes of all time. But it would be good to see Ebbsfleet remain competitive. And I think they'll see this as a game where a lot of people will have written them off. I think on the lazy eye, a lot of people will look at this as, oh, York will easily, comfortably win this. But I think they will make it a difficult place for York to go to. But I do expect York to be able to get the 3 points. Another game for me where I could see it being a bit of a banana skin, and that's my team, FC Halifax Town, coming up against Boston United. Of course, this is a Boston side who've just beaten York and got a strong point against Barnet. Can they get a point? Well, can they get anything out of this game against a Halifax side who are very inconsistent at home?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll be straight with you. I'm between a 1-0 Halifax win and a 0-0 draw. I think Halifax probably, I know you're a little bit concerned that, that they find it difficult at home, and Boston, have picked up a couple of decent results recently, haven't they? Keeping a clean sheet against Barnet and beating York at home. I'm going to go 1-0 to Halifax, though. I think you'll find a way. I don't know if it'll be the easiest game on the eye, but I'm going to back your boys. 1-0 Halifax.
I've actually gone for a different result, which is good. I didn't expect that. I thought you'd go for a draw, to be honest, because I was thinking of changing my prediction up. But I've gone for a 1-1 draw. I just feel it is a real... When you look at a home form overall, we're down in 17th. This is a Boston side that are fighting for their lives. I do think it is still realistic, perhaps, for them to stay up this season. I think it's a big ask. They probably need playoff form. But I think it's realistic, and they are being competitive in terms of getting the results again. Recently, of course, against Barnet and then York. And I just feel they'll be fighting for their lives. I could see them scoring early and us getting back into the game. I want to go for a win, but I just think it's a really difficult game, this. And it's a typical match where I could see us dropping points. I could see us dropping points against Boston, and honestly, is going to York and beating them. That's the type of team that I think this Halifax side is. So I'm actually going to go for a 1-1 draw for this game, which would be a very good point for Boston. But I think for Halifax, they should be going into this hoping to get all 3 points. Moving on to...
Quick question. Normally, when you do these, I love seeing the comments flash up with the viewers' predictions. Are they doing it tonight? Have you got an issue with it?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. We've got a few predictions that have come in. I do, of course, I should have said this at the start. I do encourage people to get your predictions in. I will start putting them on the screen as well for anyone that does want to get involved in the predictions as well. We'll move on to the next game. This is a big game. Gateshead versus Altrincham. Gateshead, I think a lot of people were saying that they were going downhill. They're not the same team with the players that they've lost. And then they go and pull it out of the bag, putting 4 past Wealdstone away from home. Of course, Altrincham come into this probably one of the most informed sides in the division. What do you think? How do you think this game will go?
Well, I was going to ask, would you mind going first on this one? Because I'm still making my mind up.
Yeah, it's a hard one to predict, this game. I think prior to that Wealdstone game, I'd have been certainly backing Altrincham at the moment. I think they're a real force for me. As for Gateshead, it's really hard to see where they're at because they're going to put 4 past a Wealdstone side that are really struggling. But you can only beat what you're in front of you. And when you convincingly beat someone like that, you do start to feel that perhaps that is the turnaround for them to get back on form. You look at the previous 2 results as well, the draws. I think you look at that draw against Oldham, it probably looks like a better point now because Oldham have picked up since then. It's a hard one to predict. I'm going to kind of cop out in this game. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. How do you see it going?
It's between a draw and an away win for Altrincham. Gateshead are difficult to pick right now, aren't they? They obviously lost the manager. They lost players. They, to some extent, Carl Magnay says they couldn't really be their normal self, play with their normal identity because of players missing. And then they go and get that 4-0 win at Wealdstone, which makes you sit up and take note a little bit. But is everything all bright and rosy again at Gateshead? I'm not sure. I think I think they're going to have their work cut out. I think they'll make the playoffs. They've got a nice little cushion. They may do well to hold on to the 5th place that they're in at the moment. But this is going to be one of their stiffer tests in the remainder of the season. And Altrincham right now, with the form of Newby and Linney, are just a little bit too tasty for me. So I think both sides will score. And again, I'm going to go for an away win. So Gateshead 1, Altrincham 2.
I was swaying towards that way, but I'm kind of glad I have gone for a draw now for that one. Hartlepool versus Maidenhead. Tough one, this. Two that I think are known to be quite physical, Maidenhead. I think Sam made a good point about Maidenhead being more technical this season, but probably less physical. I am going to back Hartlepool to win this game. I think it'll be a really low-scoring game. But Hartlepool being back at home, of course, getting a point in midweek against Tamworth at home, I think they'll be able to back it up with another win here. And that's something they certainly need to do after Tuesday's result. I think if you look at Tamworth and Maidenhead, going into those two fixtures, you'd expect at least 4 points, I would say, if not 6. So I do think they'll be able to defeat Maidenhead. I'm going to go for a 1-0 Hartlepool win. How do you see it going?
Well, I'll tell you what I've been waiting for, Luke. I've been waiting for what I call the silly season. It normally starts around now, and it's where teams that are chasing playoff places come up against teams that are fighting for their lives at the bottom, and you start to see some odd-looking reverses, don't you? Maidenhead love being the party poopers. They, under Dev, are always capable of winning any match they're involved in, whatever side they've got out. Now, Hartlepool, it's really weird. I think if they start well and they get the lead, I don't think they'll look back in this one. But I think it might be quite frustrating for a while for them. And I think I've got this funny feeling that Maidenhead might take the lead, but Hartlepool will pull it round. And I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw.
Fair enough then. Yeah, a bit of a different prediction for this one. Moving on to the next one. Southend versus Rochdale. No, Oldham actually versus Sutton, I should say. Missing out a game there. Yeah, I think this will be a tough game for Oldham. Sutton, a really physical side. The type of side that last season will be Oldham's worst nightmare. And I think it'll be a difficult game once again for them. Of course, drawing in midweek. I'm actually going to go for Sutton to win this game. I don't think Oldham had a finished article yet. And I think Sutton are on form at the moment. Of course, Davids is scoring a bunch of goals for them. A really physical side that will embrace going to Boundary Park. And I'm actually going to go for Sutton to win this game 2-1. How do you see it going?
Yeah, I'm glad you went that way. I can see that scenario for sure. But Oldham have had a couple of 2-2 draws of late, and I'm going to go for another one, another Desmond, as I call it, a 2-2 between Oldham and Sutton. Yeah, no doubt Will Davies on the score sheet again, and probably Fondop and Norwood doing their thing as well. Sutton, a decent side, but in that kind of bracket, along with Southend and Hartlepool, where they're very competitive every week, but not quite consistent enough to be right up there in the playoffs just at the moment. I wouldn't write them off long term. They could still play a part, but I reckon they'll get a point up at Boundary Park, 2-2.
Southend versus Rochdale. Rochdale trying to get back inside the playoffs. Of course, it is in their hands if they win those games in hand. But of course, since they've started playing again, they've been a little inconsistent, dropping points to Ebbsfleet, losing to Oldham as well, and Forest Green in there. Southend being at home, I think if Southend get the first goal, like I said, I think they'll go on to win this game, and I do think they will do that. And I'm going to go for a 2-0 Southend win. How do you see it going?
I'm going to go for, after predicting the first 6 games as a win to one side or another, I'm now going to go for my 4th consecutive draw. It's another 1-1. And the reason I think it will be 1-1 is because I don't think Southend will get the first goal. I think Rochdale will. But I've just got this little vibe that Southend are going to get a fairly late last 10-minute equaliser. A point apiece, 1-1.
Woking versus Tamworth. Two sides where it's quite optimistic at the moment. We spoke about Woking's takeover, and of course Tamworth doing well in the league, certainly overachieving this season. I'm going to go for 1-1 draw. Like I said, it's a hard one for me to really pick a winner out of these two, working on good form at the moment. And Tamworth certainly are, in terms of looking like they're going to be able to survive this season. And you've mentioned earlier about every point for Tamworth being a good point. I think this will be the case again, going to work and then getting a point off them. So I'm going to go for 1-1 draw. How do you see it going?
It puts me in a predicament because that was the score that I was going to go. I was going to go for a fifth consecutive draw. Probably 2-1, but I mean, it's a toss of a coin either way. I don't see Woking losing at home to Tamworth. So Ardley's just got away, isn't he? A little bit like he's the managerial version of Forest Green, isn't he? I think he's going to just find a way here, and Woking will continue their upward trajectory. So I'm going to go Woking 2, Tamworth 1.
Final game, then we've got Yeovil versus Wealdstone. I actually think the Stones will be able to get the job done here and get all 3 points. Yeovil's home form at the moment, this might shock you. They're currently in the bottom 4 based on home form at the moment. They've only picked 17 points up in home this season so far. As for Wealdstone, they need to get back on form. They've certainly got the quality to. Yeovil as well, I believe, winless in 8 as well for them. A lot of draws in there too. But I just feel, Wealdstone, they need to get back on form, and I think this is a perfect opportunity for this. I think for Yeovil, I think you could flip that and say for Yeovil, if they're wanting to get back to winning ways, a game against an out of form Wealdstone side could be the perfect opportunity for them. But I am going to slide towards Wealdstone winning this game, and I am going to go for a 1-0 Wealdstone win and Alex Reid to score the goal, of course. How do you see it going?
Well, I think for one of the first few times tonight, we've been closer with our predictions, haven't we? But I'm going to go for a 1-0 win the other way. I think this is just a fixture that Yeovil need right now just to get a little bit back on track. I don't see them doing anything spectacular this season. Oddly, I feel less confident that they can make the playoffs now than I did when we made our predictions before the start of the season, when I thought they might be this sort of, a free hit this season in a way. Nobody would expect them to be involved.
Early, didn't it? Came off at first season.
That's right, exactly. But yeah, so you go 1-0 to Wealdstone. I'm going to go 1-0 to Yeovil on this one.
Fair enough then, and that wraps up the predictions then for this game week. I haven't actually got the updated scores on there, so I do apologise for that. I will update it from the previous week when I actually watched last week's podcast, which I have to do. The things you have to do behind the scenes that certain people don't see as well. But please remember to like and subscribe to the podcast. It does go a long way liking. It gets it out to more people, and subscribing, of course, builds a community up even more. Of course, as well, if you want to become a channel member, it is just £2.99 a month, and you do get some exclusive perks within there. Or if you do just want to support the channel, I do really appreciate that. Of course, it's not a case of, when I say early access, I mean early access. I don't mean a case of you're not going to get, if you're not a channel member, I should say, you're not going to not be able to see certain videos, because that's not what I'm about from the start. I've always produced videos out there, and it's not something that I'm going to start doing where I'm taking things away from people who could have been supporting from the start and don't actually want to become a member. So don't stress about that. You can watch every single video. There are some exclusive perks that you do get. So if you do want to become a channel member, you can do for just £2.99 a month. If you also want to check out our sponsors, Cards Accepted, I would really appreciate that. You get 50% off your card machine if you do that, if you use that link in the description. There's no contracts or monthly fees. Remember to share them about as well to all your supporters clubs as well within the club, and let them know about Cards Accepted too, as I'm sure that's something that they'd certainly be interested in if they did hear about that. Rob, as well, cheers for joining me once again. And would you like to plug NL Full Time?
Yeah, pleasure as always to join you, Luke. At NL Full Time on X or Twitter. Our latest podcast came out a couple of days ago, so that's out there. Thanks for having us on. Have a good weekend yourself. And to our viewers as well, thanks for your comments and joining in with the predictions. And I look forward to watching next week, Luke, to see how we both did.
Yeah, certainly. I don't actually know if Paul's back next week. Hopefully he's for the consistency of the channel. But Rob, no, I do really appreciate you coming on, of course, joining me on Sunday as well. And I do appreciate everyone that has tuned in tonight. Like I mentioned, remember to like and subscribe to the podcast, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.